What does the separation of church and state actually mean, and where did that come from? Many might be surprised to learn that that phrase is nowhere in the Constitution. It's not there. You can go look. And I encourage you, if you haven't read the Constitution recently, this would be a good time to do that and refresh yourself on it and look for that phrase. You're not going to find it. So where does this phrase come from? In 1801, after Thomas Jefferson was elected president of the United States after John Adams, the Danbury Baptists wrote a letter of congratulations to President Jefferson. Here's Jefferson's response. Gentlemen, I contemplate with sovereign reverence that the act of the whole American people, which declared that their legislature should make no law, and this is in quotes, no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. Okay, so this is where that phrase comes from. Separation of church and state is from this letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote. And this is the proof that courts have been using since the early to mid 1900s to restrict religious liberty and remove God from the public square and from schools. And they claim that what Jefferson actually meant by saying this is that there should be no mingling of religion and government, no matter how small the crossover. They've got to be like oil and water. They cannot mix at all. And that's what he meant. And that's just simply not true. Remember, many of the colonies were founded by pilgrims escaping religious persecution. The countries that they were fleeing had official state-sponsored religions. And this isn't state-sponsored religion like, hey, we're going to hang up some posters of the Ten Commandments in courtrooms or in schools and, hope that we get some conversion through osmosis or by just people looking at this. No, this was, if you don't go along with the state church, you were subject to severe persecution, imprisonment, and sometimes death. Okay, so let's look at what this clause actually says, that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. So first, the word Congress is really important here. This is a restriction on federal power, not on state power. Congress is the lawmaking branch of the federal government, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. Now, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Basically, the federal government can't dub the Baptists or the Methodists or the Catholics as the official church of the United States. The founders were protecting themselves from what pilgrim forefathers and mothers who crossed the ocean and faced incredible hardships to escape. They were preventing that from happening again. They didn't want any more church persecuting others, no more killing people who are trying to print the Bible in common language, no more church and government leaders duking it out and assassinating each other while jockeying for political power. That's the separation of church and state that the founders wanted and that Jefferson was talking about. Now, probably the capstone of evidence that just shows what the founding era thought about the relationship between religion and government is the Northwest Ordinance. This is an ordinance that is widely considered one of the most important founding documents, right underneath the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution itself. This was enacted in 1787, the same year that the Constitutional Convention was held, and this was in force for decades. So this remained in force even after the Constitution was ratified. And it basically outlined, among other things, the requirements for bringing a new state into the Union. In Article 3, it says, religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. In other words, if you want to become a part of the United States, you've got to be willing to, in your Constitution, put in there a provision for establishing schools to promote religion, morality, and knowledge, all of those together. And this is why the Bible was the primary reader for schools for decades, for over 100 years in our country. And no one's head exploded over it. This is why the first Congress authorized federal funds for printing the first American published Bible. The founders here saw no contradictions in this. If you understand it from the perspective of the founders themselves, that this is meant to just stop the federal government from establishing an official religion, it all suddenly makes sense.